I begrudgingly earn a living repossessing bank collateral in the form of motor vehicles. As you can probably imagine, most people I deal with are not happy to see me. For some background, I'm not your typical repo man by looking at me. Most guys that I work with are over 6'3", 200 to 300 pounds, bald with a beard. I know that sounds specific, but it really does hold true in my experience. I, on the other hand, am 5'11", 150 pounds, but I do have a beard. So, I was working out during the day and checking a retail location for a vehicle that I'd been searching for. The address that I was checking was located in a large mall area. I glanced in my rearview mirror to see a red Ford Focus behind me. He made a few of the same turns I did, but I didn't think twice about it. After the 7th or 8th turn that he mimicked, though, I decided to pull into a parking lot. I figured that he would either move on or come and talk to me, if that was his goal. I noticed that he was on the phone in my rear view. I parked the truck and watched the car as it parked about 50 feet from me. I noticed the man driving the Focus was staring and pointing at me, though, as he spoke on the phone, so I decided to ask what his deal was. When I approached, he got out of his vehicle, which was alarming, so I backed off and didn't get closer. I leaned my head out of my open window and I said, "Hey sir, is there a reason you're following me?" He moves his phone from his ear, covering the microphone, and yells, "Yeah, you're harassing people on private property. The cops are on their way." I told him that that was fine and I would wait around to speak to the police. He yelled some more unintelligible nonsense as I put my window up and sat pretty waiting for the police. A few minutes later, a cruiser shows up behind me. The officer approached my window and we spoke about the situation. I told him that I'm permitted on private property unless I'm explicitly asked to leave by someone who owns the property or works security, which he agreed with. Long story short, the police told me that I was good to go and asked that I not engage with this man as I left. I complied and planned to move on with my day. About 20 minutes after all of this, I glanced in my rear view to see the same Focus driving a couple of cars behind me. So, I parked again, out of frustration now. I immediately exited my truck and lit a cigarette. The man driving his car screeched up beside me and exited his car without putting it in park, rather just putting it in neutral. As his car begins to roll away, he is turned away from it, screaming at me about violating his right to privacy and harassing the public at this mall. I calmly told him that I was already cleared by the PD and that I was losing patience. I told him that he needed to leave right then before I called the police. And it was at this point that his vehicle struck the concrete base of a light pole and stopped. He started screaming and saying that I crashed his car. I told him that I had dashcam footage that would negate that claim, and that's when he charged me. Now remember, I'm not a big guy, but I've dealt with plenty of confrontation at this job, and this guy did not appear coordinated at all. I stepped out of his path and guided him to the ground, telling him to stay down while I leave and to leave me alone. I got in my truck and I left. But looking back, I absolutely should have called the police again, as I've gotten the officer's cell phone number and badge number and everything. But this story all comes to a head 2 nights later in a bizarre turn of events that genuinely scared me. At this point, I had just gotten married to my lovely wife, and we were living in our little 1-bedroom in our hip little suburb of a major Midwest city. It was a Friday night, and I decided I would go and grab some beers for the wife and I to enjoy after a long week. As I was leaving the store with our booze, I saw a maroon Ford Focus in the parking lot, seemingly unoccupied. I made a mental note of the coincidence, given the bizarre ordeal that I had a couple of days prior, but didn't think too much more of it. As I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, the Focus pulled in behind me. I hadn't noticed it followed me until this point, and I lived on the 3rd floor, so I decided I was going to hustle up the steps, just in case this was the same guy and he'd stalked me or something in order to extract his revenge for whatever perceived transgression that I'd bothered him with. But my plan didn't work. He followed me to my patio where my wife was waiting, again, unbeknownst to me. I was apparently not feeling very observant that night. And that was when this guy snuck up, crouching behind our small fence. Neither of us knew that he was there until he said, still hidden from view, pretty girl. I snapped to my feet and began to look around when I spotted him. I knew instantly it was him too, and I immediately ordered my wife to go inside, lock the door and call the police. When I approached him, he drew a small switchblade and pointed it at my belly. I began to back up with my hands up, saying something along the lines of, "We don't have to do this, what do you want?" And he told me that he wanted me to call my wife back outside, but that was not going to happen. I'd rather be stabbed than expose her to this man, so I told him as much. He lunged at me with the knife, grazing and cutting my side as I attempted to grab and redirect his forearm. Then he went to the ground where he lost his knife. I got some knees to connect to his head, and when the police lights became visible, I heard shouting. Long story short, Buddy was arrested on site, and I provided the badge number and the PD of the officer from work a couple of days prior in order to corroborate my claims. I decided to press charges, and as far as I know, he's awaiting a court date. I'm sure that I'll have to be involved in it, which I'm not looking forward to. So I'm female, 23 now, and in this story I was 21 with a 4-month-old baby. He's mine and he's 2 now. I'm about 5'9", a bit overweight, and I have social anxiety around new people. So I went with my sister, 26 and 5 feet tall, to her work as she worked at a very nice restaurant in a shopping centre, and we went straight there for her 6 p.m. start after being in the city all day collecting money for a cat rescue. I'm just chilling out, eating good food and binging on Reddit when I decide I want to smoke. I know, bad habit. So I pack up the kidlet and let my sister know that I'm going out to the car park to have a smoke as she passes through the dining area. The car park was about 70 meters away, I think, from the restaurant, had good lighting, and because it was so late, I could hang around near the doors. And this is where it starts to get creepy. So, the security guard was doing his rounds, about my height and Indian. I'm not trying to be racist here, and I know that this is just anecdotal, but most of my experiences with Indians, personally, have not been all that good. But anyway, he decides to check on me, and I was like, "That's cool, man, I'm just having a smoke." And the conversation went something like this. "Hey, how you doing? You okay?" "Hi, yeah, I'm pretty good, just waiting for my sister to get off work." "Ah, good. Your baby?" "Very cute baby. I have 4 at home. You got a husband?" "Yeah, he's my baby." "That's good. I have a fiancé." Complete lie, mind you. I was 100% single, but he was already making me a little bit anxious. "You know, I could be husband. I look after baby for you. I look after you." No thanks. I'm sure your wife wouldn't appreciate that anyway." No, wife love baby. Wife will love you. You can come home with me." I finished my smoke, and I'd been moving the pram further away from him every second. No thanks, I gotta go, okay?" He then follows me inside. I go all around the mostly closed shopping centre, hoping to lose him in Coles. I lost him for about 5 seconds, but Coles had shut for the night. The only place left open was my sister's work, so I went back there, even though I didn't want him to know where I was. As I was about to walk into the restaurant, I saw him coming up the escalator, and he was still watching me. I take the last 2 steps towards the hostess, who happened to be the owner's daughter, and told her what was going on. At this point, the security guard is standing in front of the restaurant, still staring at me. The hostess takes me to a semi-secluded booth and goes to talk to her dad about the situation. As she's gone, the creepy security guard came into the dining area, searched for me, and then came and sat at my booth, way too close to me and my child. "So, how old are you? I want to ravish you, pretty woman. You be my mother to my babies. We make cute babies." And at this point, it was very clear that I was very uncomfortable. He still made it worse, though. "But don't worry, I security. I protect you and baby." He's searching across the table with one hand now. The other hand is reaching towards my pram. I'm frozen. I don't care about the hand near me. I'm watching the other one because nobody touches my baby. I'm about to snap, go full mama bear mode when the owner, 40s or 50s, 6 foot plus big wide build, at the restaurant, steps in asking if there's a problem. "Hey, is there a problem here?" No problem. Just talking to my lovely lady." "This is a customer. Has she done something wrong?" "No, never. She's my lady. See? We're going to get married." He grins creepily. The silent warning to play along is etched into his face. "No, I'm not. Please, just leave me alone. I just want to eat my dinner." Funny lady, right? See? We joke. "I don't know you. Please, just leave me alone." "She says she wants you to leave now, alright, bud?" She's just messing. She loved me. I'll be waiting for you, pretty lady." He leaves at this point, and the other guy makes sure I'm okay and moves me to the employee break room and fills my sister in too. 2 hours later, and my sister has finished her shift, we packed up and we head to the car. And the guy appears out of nowhere. I think that he was actually waiting for me the entire time. "I take pretty lady and baby home now, okay? Come on, pretty lady, we go home." And like an angel steps out from his car, the guy from the restaurant stands right behind this dude. "Hey bud, she's going home with her sister, alright?" "No, a pretty lady mine. She come home with me." "Hey lady, get in your car, I'll take care of this." So we get into the car and we go home. I found out the next day from my sister that her boss had physically restrained this guy because he went to grab my arm as I was getting into the car and then got him fired and permanently banned from that shopping center. The whole situation was really messed up and, quite honestly, quite creepy. I was 15 years old, and back in those days, you'd usually catch my friends and I at the big AMC movie theater. It's a huge theater. It kind of reminds me of an airport almost, and it was a popular hangout for kids that age on weekends. I remember going to the movies one night with friends, and a group of guys approached us. We started chatting and flirting, I must admit, as you do at that age, and they said that they went to one of the local high schools. One of the guys that I was talking to eventually asked for my phone number, and I gave it to him. I was naive and thought that this was pretty harmless, and these were the days before cell phones were ubiquitous, so I gave him my home phone number. And to my surprise, he called me maybe a day or two after that, and we talked for a bit. We had a few more phone conversations here and there before he asked me on a date. As we made plans to meet, he told me that he needed to tell me something. He admitted that he wasn't actually 16 or whatever age he said he was, and he wasn't even in high school. He was 22, in fact. I fell silent, trying to think of my response, but there was more. Not only was he 22, but he had been in prison and was recently released. Why? For accessory to murder for being in the car when his friend shot someone while they were driving by. I still remember the feeling of just being frozen in fear, and I calmly said that I didn't want to talk to him anymore and to please never call me again, and I hung up. After I hung up, though, the phone immediately started ringing. I picked it up, but before I could even say hello, this man had called back and was already screaming at the top of his lungs into the phone. I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but it was along the lines of, "Don't you ever hang up on me again," calling me every name in the book. So what did I do? I hung up again, this time leaving the phone off of the receiver. I remember being so scared to tell my parents because I didn't want them to be disappointed in me. They were always so proud of me for making good decisions. It was my fault, after all, giving some guy I'd just met my phone number, so I didn't say anything at first. The calls kept coming, but to keep my parents in the dark, I usually made sure that I was the one answering the phone when it rang. And he told me that he had put my home phone number into a reverse phone directory and found my address. He would call and say things like, "I like your sister's new green car," to make sure I knew that he was watching the house. Around this time, I developed a fear of being home alone. I couldn't be alone even for a minute, so if my parents and sister were ever gone, I'd call a neighbour friend to spend time with me. One night, my parents were in bed, but my sister and I were up late watching TV, when we saw a car pull into our driveway and sit there with the lights on. I couldn't see who was in it, but I knew that it was him. And shortly after that, everything just stopped. I remember thinking how crazy it was that he had done all that and then just disappeared. A year, maybe 2 years later, I was sitting at home watching the finale of American Idol. It's funny the little random details you remember when something significant happens. And the phone rang. But the caller ID said it was coming from a correctional facility. Confused, I answered it, and it was a collect call from, you can guess who. I honestly couldn't believe it, and I obviously didn't accept the call, and I just hung up. And I never heard from him again. I did eventually tell my parents about this years later, and they said, no wonder you were so scared to be alone. I should have told them at the time, I know, because it could have escalated much further than what it did. This story actually mirrors a similar experience I had a year ago too, one that I've shared elsewhere. I really do wonder if there's something about me that attracts these types of people too after 2 occurrences like this. One lapse in judgment can lead to situations like these. Also, before I forget to mention this, one of his harassing phone calls was particularly creepy because he called me and he described how he saw a dog get hit by a car on the highway, and the whole time he was just kind of laughing to himself. And not in a way that was just intended to scare me, but he was laughing like he genuinely found it funny, which leads me to believe that this person was an absolute psychopath. G'day mates, it's Busta here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you would like to help me out, then please go ahead and watch another video by clicking on a card on the screen. As always guys, thanks for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.